New Thought Media Network and the Universal Joy Center are proud to bring you The Joy Show. One voice, one story, infinite inspiration. Join your host, Barbara Jean, every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time or 1 p.m. Mountain Time. Tune in live or watch anytime on youtube.com/@UJOYC. The Joy Show with Barbara Jean. The perfect way to get inspired on Friday afternoons. Only on New Thought Media Network. And please like, share, and subscribe. And now, let's join Barbara Jean on The Joy Show.
Good afternoon and welcome to The Joy Show, where joy is an acronym meaning just one you. We're all unique expressions, all divine and marvelous. And so I'm so excited to be with you today and to have our show take a part 2. So last week I interviewed Rev Christine Monks, and today we are continuing that conversation. But before we get started, let me begin with the land acknowledgement. As we gather here on these lands that have been looked after for millennia by many different groups, we're standing on the historical land of the Wendat peoples and more recently of the Mississaugas and the Haudenosaunee nations. And it's now home to many diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island. May we walk alongside our Indigenous family, recognizing our shared stewardship of the earth. Let us carry forward the spirit of unity, understanding, and resilience that we've been reminded of through our reflections. Let us hold in our hearts an intention to learn, to support, and to advocate for justice and sovereignty for us all. In doing so, we acknowledge our interconnectedness and the strength that comes from standing together in truth, respect, and love. And may this intention guide us in our actions and thoughts, inspiring us to contribute to a world where the dignity and rights of all are honored. And let us be mindful of the role that we play in this ongoing journey towards healing and unity. And by making this acknowledgement, we strive to be allies and take an active part in reconciliation by honoring the land, the history, as well as the unique heritage and culture of the Indigenous peoples. This fosters our commitment to create a world that works for the highest and best good of all life. Miigwech. Thank you. And now my guest, Rev Christine Renée Monks, is a staff minister with the Center for Spiritual Living, Colorado Springs, a certified life coach, transgender activist, and public speaker. She is a grandmother, a father, a pilot, and an FAA-certified instrument flight instructor. Wow, this woman has done it all. Christine, welcome to the show. I'm so delighted you're here.
Well, I'm delighted to be back. Thank you, Barbara Jean.
Well, what's so wonderful is the conversation felt like it still had room. There was still a lot more to discuss as we move forward. We got into some of the pronouns and how they work or don't work. And I think I'd like to start there. So we had talked briefly right before the show just about, the she, he, they, them. Can you talk a little bit to that, especially as a trans woman? Is there anything about that we should know more about?
So I think a lot of times people believe that offering their pronouns or asking someone's pronouns is inappropriate because they believe they can look at a person and tell what their pronouns are.
Okay.
And what I advocate for is when you introduce yourself, offer your pronouns, because I think that does a couple of things. It lets someone know that you're sensitive to that or aware of that.
Yes.
It also potentially offers an entree that you might be an ally in a way where someone isn't sure how they'd be received. If I use pronouns that might be not what you would expect me to use, my pronouns are she, hers, and if I use she, they, or they, them, or something, if you introduce yourself and offer your pronouns, it's an invitation for me to give you my pronouns back. And so I think that's the part of it that oftentimes, specifically I'll say allies miss. It's like, well, I can look at you and tell you're a woman. And it's like, that's not really the point. You can't look at me and tell my name. So why would you assume you know what my pronouns are? And sometimes people say, well, what are your preferred pronouns? And I tend to, gently invite them to say they are my pronouns. They're not my preferred pronouns, because you can say, well, pronouns are she, her, but I prefer to call you he, him. And you might say, yeah, that doesn't really feel very affirming or like you're seeing me. So, so that's the short thing about pronouns. But people who don't identify strictly as part of the gender binary, meaning they're all male or all female or all masculine or all feminine, oftentimes use they, them pronouns, either because they're gender fluid or non-binary, in which case it's important to know the pronouns so that you can address them properly and in a way that supports their identity.
Excellent, excellent. So tell me, what is gender fluid and what is non-binary, for anybody watching that maybe hasn't heard those terms before?
Good question. Sorry, I'm throwing out terms that people might not know.
I know, it's perfect.
So gender fluid refers to people, it's somewhat self-explanatory. There's a fluidity around their gender. Sometimes they may present more masculinely, sometimes they may present more femininely, and oftentimes as a container that allows space for both of those presentations and everything in between, they will choose to use they, them pronouns, rather than saying, well, if I'm wearing a dress, call me she, and if I'm wearing something that looks more masculine, call me he, which I have people who identify that way, and it's just keeps you on your toes. Non-binary is a term that just refers to people who say, you know what, this is an artificial distinction to say that you're either A or B. You're either a man or a woman. I think we're both and. Certainly something within our science of mind philosophy and teaching, absolutely, we talk about both and yeah. I think that applies to genders as well, as I think all of us are both and. Some of us tilt more in one direction than the other, but yeah. I think this invites space for a lot of things to show up.
I think what I like about all of this is that what we're kind of saying underneath it all is that who you are is sufficient. It is enough. And we need to just accept people, in the way that they feel most comfortable. Like if we could see people for who they are rather than who we would like them to be or who we think they should be, like get the judgments out of the way and just begin to see the person as a person. Something happened with your lighting and your sound. I can't hear you. Oh dear. No sound. We are dealing with technology, and technology sometimes does what it wants to do. So we'll just, there you are.
Okay. That was totally a mea culpa. That is my cat. And I almost tried to throw him out prior to starting this, and he just decided to wait until I was speaking to crawl back behind my screen. So I'm so sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. It's so funny, our little animals that want to come and be part of the part of whatever we're doing. They want to be with us. So I love that. I just can't remember where we were.
That's fine. Why don't you take me off screen for just long enough to get 7 out of behind my computer?
What's wonderful about this conversation and what I want to say to people from my perspective is one of the best things that you can do is accept that people are people and to talk to them from a place of warmth, a place of, oh, tell me about you, like a place of curiosity. When we're curious about someone else, we just create an environment where they can share their ideas, they can share what they think about, what they believe in, and they can share a little bit of themselves. And I think that's the most important thing. And that's what love is. Love is I accept you as you are. There's nothing about you that I'm going to go, oh, change this, alter that, do this different. Those conversations come up, but they come up from a different perspective when you're in a place of I love you for you. And so I think it's just really, really important that we start to understand each other a little bit better and accept each other. Don't try to make people in your image, make people in your own. Make you your own. Let
Yeah.
them be their own.
Well, I love the point you're making about letting people be themselves and accepting
Mhm.
them. And it seems like there's often a tendency to make that wrong or make that incorrect. And I think from my perspective, it takes a certain degree of courage to assert your identity, especially around gender, which is something we all learn from a very early
Oh,
age, that
yes.
when someone is on a journey parallel to mine or similar to mine, I think it's really helpful when we acknowledge that and try to create a safe space without coming across as intrusive, right?
Yes.
Without coming across as needing to know more about me and my journey than either I'm willing to offer freely or that
Mhm.
you would ask anyone else of their journey that you just met casually. And so that's the
Yeah.
interesting dichotomy, perhaps, of what I've
Mhm.
experienced sometimes with people, is sometimes people ask really inappropriate questions. And
Yeah.
it's like, really? Would you ask anyone else that question? And I
That
get that they're curious. I so appreciate that they're hungry for knowledge. And yet, boundaries are always important when dealing with people, especially if you don't know them well.
I think that's a really good point. That any question I ask you, I should be willing to ask anybody, and it should be appropriate for anybody. And I think that's a really, if we look at the question and go, how would I feel if somebody asked that of me? Would I feel it's appropriate? Would I feel that it's inappropriate? I think that's a good way to sort of look at where I can take the conversation. But there are a lot of questions that can be asked. And I think it would be, it might be really helpful if you could share a little bit of what you would be comfortable having someone who knows nothing about transgender, somebody who really doesn't know anything about the LGBTQ plus community,
The queer community, let's just call it
queer
queer. It's
community.
easier to
That's
say,
so much
right?
easier, easier than the alphabet. But there's people who don't understand. And so what questions would be comfortable or appropriate, do you think?
Well, I'm going to split it into two parts before I get too far into it, and we can maybe make this an interaction, okay?
Yes,
If I
yes.
have not shared with you that I'm trans, I'm going to suggest that no question about my gender journey is appropriate.
Exactly.
Okay? So if I've publicly shared, if I just got done delivering a Sunday talk and I indicated that I was transgender or shared something about my transition, then I think you could respectfully ask, are you open to me asking you about your journey? Or are you willing
Exactly.
to share some information about
Yeah.
that? Um, I do think, and we may have talked about this last week, is I think part of it should be we, if we're not part of the community, ought to attempt to self-educate rather than say, well, I don't need to learn anything about transgender issues. I'm just going to ask Christine because she'll tell me.
Mhm.
It's the same way I don't really expect my Black, Indigenous, people of color friends to educate me on racism. It's like I need to do my own work around
You got to
racism
do your
rather
research.
than say, I'm really an ally on your cause and teach me what I need to know, because it can be a big burden. So,
Yeah,
first question, unless I'm sharing with you that I'm trans, I don't think it's appropriate to say, are you trans?
absolutely not.
In fact, I have a friend who came to my birthday party last weekend who isn't trans, and someone came up to her and said, are you trans? Now, it felt really awkward to her
Of course it
because
would.
she isn't. And so all of a sudden it's like, oh, do I not look like a woman to you? Do I not fit whatever your stereotype of typical beauty is? So that's always the awkward thing. And then even if she were trans, which again, she wasn't or isn't, where do you go with that conversation?
Yeah, it's really
It's,
inappropriate.
it's really inappropriate.
Yeah.
So assuming I have shared with you my status as a trans woman, and you've respectfully said, are you open to some questions? And if I say no, just say, I get it, I
Thank you.
appreciate that, and
Yeah.
then let it go. But if I say I am, it's probably best not to go into what level of body modification I've had. Okay.
Oh,
So I
geez.
don't really know. You act like no one would ever ask you that. People ask that all the time. And it's like so strange. It's like, you really need to know about my genitals? Do you know about anyone else's genitals that in this room or that you get together with? So I understand the natural curiosity, and yet it's inappropriate
Inappropriate.
at so many levels. So
Yeah.
you might ask me how long I've known. You might ask me when I first decided to transition. You might ask me
Yeah.
what has been my biggest joy or my biggest surprise in doing this. There's a lot of things you could understand, but this focus on the physical, this is so much more of a mental and emotional and legal journey, which I may have shared some of that last time. But the act that everybody thinks it's all about body parts, it's not. Okay.
It's not at all. Yeah. Yeah, because
It might be a little bit about that, but
well, maybe a little bit, but the fact is that you are a woman and have always been a woman. You were just in a body that didn't match.
yeah, that didn't feel congruent and
Yeah,
didn't allow me to easily express who I am.
exactly.
And that's the piece of it, I think, that we struggle with. I mean, I transitioned in my 60s, and I did my darndest to figure out a way to balance who I was with the body that I was given
Yeah.
for most of my life. And I just couldn't figure out how to balance it anymore. And I just figured it wasn't mine to balance at this point. It was mine to align and embrace who I am.
Yeah. That's an important statement, because I think that, there are so many questions about how do you know? And right now there's so much news around transgender, especially when it comes to young people. And all of these questions and all of these falsehoods about what is going on or what could go on or whatever the case may be. And I think that media is playing a role that is not theirs to play by offering any sort of half thought out idea without actually doing their own research.
Yeah, and I sometimes think it takes really subtle forms, and maybe it's not even all that subtle.
Mhm.
Referring to me as a biological male rather than a transgender female is a misstatement and a slight, and yet
Absolutely.
it reinforces the kind of gender belief. And I just think being disrespectful or unkind to people is just never a solid strategy. I mean,
No.
sometimes people wear dress based on their cultural values that I find unusual as an American, or perhaps you do as a Canadian. And yet I would never think it was appropriate for me to make fun of or belittle them for
Exactly.
who they identify as. And our religious identity is an axis of our identity, just like our gender identity is, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's an interesting comment, because I remember my eldest daughter was at a park here in Toronto with her grandson, my great grandson, and there was a woman there who was wearing the full hijab, and Arlene started chatting with her. The kids were playing together, and she looked at Arlene and said, "People never talk to me." And she was so happy that Arlene did. Like, there was this coming together. So we tend to have a way of, we look at people, we make a judgment based on their clothing, based on height, weight, age, whatever. We will make all kinds of assessments rather than sitting down next to someone and saying, "Hey, how's it going?"
Right. And rather that judgment of, why don't you get with the program, you're in Canada now, or you're in
Heck no.
America now, get with the program,
Yeah,
lose the yarmulke, lose the hijab. I mean,
yeah.
don't honor whatever cultural traditions or religious traditions you were raised with. And that's not helpful, I think. I
Not
mean,
at all. Not at all. Now, I think the US is a melting pot, is it?
I think it is, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, it has,
where
that's been our history for
for a long
centuries.
time.
It seems like
And
right now we're not quite sure whether that's how we want to be. And
yeah, yeah, I think we are considered more, I can't remember the term, but more multicultural.
hmm,
So we don't consider ourselves a melting pot, because we don't want everybody to become the same. We are looking at exploring, accepting, and finding a way to be good with all different kinds of religions, and just people being people. And when you consider there's 8 billion people on the planet, and there's no two alike, not even twins.
how cool is that?
I think it's amazing. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And if we could look at it as being really cool and kind of great, what might that do all the way around when we're looking at people and coming to have conversations? Like, what type of feelings would that bring, and what would that do to the world order?
Yeah, I have to believe that it would foster acceptance of people who don't look or think as we do,
Yeah.
and might invite a conversation to understand, or at least respect, people with differing views and different perspectives.
Yeah, I think that's really important now when we look at our countries. I mean, both the Canada and the United States, there's a very diverse population in both countries. And, when we sit back and start to sort of push people away because we don't think they belong, I think we've created a really intense harm, because the truth is, belonging is such an important part of being a human and being alive, is that feeling of I belong somewhere, or I'm valued, or you know people are willing to have a conversation with me and be with me as I am, not going, "Oh, I can't talk to you because you put on 10 pounds," or "I can't talk to you because you're a transgender woman." I can't do, like, we have to stop that in order to create a world that, in fact, does work for the highest and best good of all. And that journey is going to probably take us a little bit of time to get there. I'm saying.
I was going to say, and so it is, because I
And
think
so it
that's
is.
very, very true. So we can affirm that. Um,
Yeah, we can.
yeah, I'm on the Centers for Spiritual Living, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, and we work to invite people to be more inclusive around different axes of diversity,
Yeah.
and try to get to that point of belonging. But
Mhm.
inclusion is part of it. But I do think what we all are seeking is finding a place where we feel like we belong, We don't have to edit aspects of ourselves. I don't have to hide something from you for you to be able to embrace me. There may be aspects of my personality, my belief system that you don't fully ascribe to or agree with, but that doesn't mean we can't find a lot of commonality and friendship and all sorts of camaraderie amongst ourselves. And it's so much richer. If I thought exactly as you thought and you thought exactly as I thought, how boring would that be?
How would you ever have a conversation?
Yeah, you'd already know the answer to any question you'd have. So the curiosity would be totally superfluous and
No
unnecessary.
curiosity, no imagination required, no fun. Like it would be, boring.
Yeah, but
yeah, I agree. Well, we're going to take a short little commercial break. We are at the halfway point of the show already. It goes so fast. And you're watching The Joy Show here on the New Thought Media Network with my lovely guest, the Reverend Christine Renée Monks. And we will be back in just a moment, so don't go away.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Well, hello there. This is Dr. Sydney Steen. I am the senior minister and spiritual leader of the North Hollywood Church of Religious Science. We are a oneness center for spiritual living. And I just want to invite you to something that I think is really, really special. In October, from the 6th to the 10th, at Unity Village in Lee Summit, Missouri, the affiliated New Thought Network will be hosting the most wonderful retreat. This will serve your soul. It will lift your heart. And oh my goodness, I want to call it an advance. So come hear wonderful speakers like Martha Creek, Sonny Cantrell, and the music will be off the hook with Ricky Byers. There will be so much there to support your soul. I hope that you will join us. You can go to antn.org. That's antn.org. You can get all the information. You can sign up. You can use a credit card, and it is safe and secure, and I hope to see you there. Have a blessed day.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Home Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And we're back. Welcome back to The Joy Show, where just being yourself is celebrated. And so we're here today with Reverend Christine Monks, and I am so delighted with the conversation that we're having because it is such an important one. Raymond Anderson might be worth having a conversation around when people disagree in a more acidic ways as expressed in words and their actions, which cause them to be more opposed to the belonging. Ooh, Raymond.
Well, it's a good thing Reverend Ray's tuning in, right?
I know. I love that. Huh. So, what do you want to say to that, Christine?
And the invitation was to reply to when people don't want to have a conversation, or what?
Well, it's,
Read it again to me.
they're expressing in words and actions, you know, kind of negatively about the idea of belonging.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, we all want to belong.
Well, I
We all
think we
want to.
do. And I don't know that every spiritual community or every community of any time has the capability to welcome all people, regardless of acidic views or things. So I'm
Yeah.
not suggesting that the only way to be successful at this is to welcome everyone, no matter how people want to do it, or like Reverend Ray's saying about how do you build a bridge when somebody's trying to blow it up. I think you invite them to go use their dynamite elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
But part of it is that the more I think we engage in a food fight with someone who disagrees with us, I think ultimately we lose. And I'll use we as a marginalized kind of person, because I just think that there are people who you're not going to convince. And I think just agreeing to disagree and suggesting there's probably a place for that person to find more support and more belonging than in your particular community. So I think some of those kinds of things we just have to let it go. But I don't think that means we should give up on trying to gently invite people into a different perspective or a viewpoint, because sometimes people come in with the most strongly held views and then they realize that they just never got to know somebody. They never got to know somebody like me or like you. And all of a sudden they're more open to being inclusive or at least neutral, which certainly is a big improvement from being acidic or hateful.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely, it is. I think, when I think about the idea of inclusion and equity and all of these, my daughter works in that field as well. And as we begin to explore our own personal beliefs, and I think we have to start there, we have to look at where am I on the spectrum? Like, do I create a space for belonging for the people who come? Or when I find someone who is against my particular philosophy or thoughts, how am I responding to that? And I love what you had to say, Christine, because for me, when people have a certain point of view, I will thank them for sharing. Well, thanks for sharing that. And, may I share my perspective, like to begin a conversation. And sometimes they'll go, no, that's fine. I'm out of here. I remember I was part of a group. I've worked a lot in the AIDS, HIV sector. And when I was working on a campaign called It Takes Courage, and that was for ministers and imams to be able to stand on the podium and speak to their congregations about HIV/AIDS. And so I was having a conversation. Somebody invited me to this Friday night church event. So I went along. It was quite enjoyable. The conversations were good. And I'm chatting with a gentleman after the fact. And we got talking about, I think we got I mentioned no, that what I mentioned was that I was part of this group creating the It Takes Courage campaign, and you could just see the lid going down, and like he was shutting off until I said, just like Jesus, who accepted everyone, that is how we need to be in our world today. And all of a sudden, his eyelids went back up, and he's like listening for a moment. And he was really clear that if you don't believe in Jesus, you're out the door. And if you are part of the LGBTQ plus, like you're doing devil work or whatever. I don't know. It was weird. But it was important for me to say to him, in a language that he could understand, rather than arguing or being a little too assertive. I just said, yeah, just like Jesus. Jesus accepted everybody, loved everybody, had the courage to stand up and say what needed to be said. And he quieted down on his point at that. So I think sometimes we have to, I don't know, I really don't engage too much in these acidic type uh, conversations. I'll sit back and go, wow, thank you for sharing, and then go on my way because I can't change your mind. You can, but I can't. And I think that's an important thing for us to really get as people. I cannot change another person's mind. I also cannot make them feel something. I don't have the power to do that. However, I can hit a button that causes them to react.
Well, I love that you reminded this person back about Jesus's message of inclusion and love.
Yes.
So the New Testament is quite silent on transgender people. All right.
Yeah.
None of Jesus is talking. I mean, there's things about being eunuchs, and some people were born eunuchs and some people were made eunuchs. And maybe that's a historical parallel, but the term transgender, or even that our understanding of what it means to be transgender is quite different now than it was back then.
Absolutely.
Although I did some historical research on drinking of female horse urine by people to get the feminizing effects back during the Roman Empire. So some of this stuff has been going on. That was the first cross-gender hormone treatment known to man, was drinking female horse urine, which is really high in estrogen. So just an FYI, I'm not recommending this. Don't try this at home, kids, please. But
please don't.
But
isn't that interesting? So
it is interesting.
Start.
No, it didn't just start, and people have been like me, or been confused, or not felt aligned with their sex assigned at birth for a long time, and it's just only more recently through some medical advances and some things like that it becomes that way. But Jesus was about love, right? I mean, I think the God of Moses was protecting the tribe and burning bushes at the top of mountains and carving stone tablets and vanquishing your enemies from your space. So that was a very different understanding of God than what Jesus's understanding of the Father within, or the God Spirit within me, being his guiding North Star. And so I do think that sometimes people get really attached to the Hebrew Bible, what we Christians might call the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible version of all the law, the Judaic law that needed to be done. And that's where sometimes they come up against these LGBTQ prohibitions and people being an abomination of God and things like that. And, I'm pretty sure Jesus said the old law doesn't apply. You just need to love your neighbor like you love yourself, and you love your God above all else. So I don't think there was anything about the rest of it that Jesus was standing up giving a lot of sermons about.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when we look at, and I don't know, just people in general and what they want, Canada's very much, it's much more non-religious than the United States is. And I think because of that, when you mention the word God, sometimes you get some pushback from people, or you mention the word God and automatically somebody thinks you're a Christian just like them, and this is what you believe. And I mean, it's interesting how it works. I've gotten great flights when, I've talked to somebody online and had a problem, and then they go, oh, so what do you do? Oh, I'm a minister. Oh, my dad was a minister. And all of a sudden they're bending over backwards to help me because they think that somehow I'm like them. And, maybe in some regard I am, but most often than not, I'm a little bit different. So I think as we journey along, wouldn't it be wonderful if we did like you and I are doing now? Just talk about life and what it is or what it could be. And when I think about a world that works for everyone. I actually don't like that phrase at all because I think it already is working for everyone according to their consciousness. But when we work for a world that works in the highest and best good of all, I think that's when we win. That's when we're putting ourselves as just as important as we would put someone else, and we start to realize our interconnectedness and really how rich and beautiful this world is. It's remarkable. I think we live in a great world. Could
We
use it.
do. And it'll be a better world tomorrow still, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, things are unfolding individually for our highest and best, I believe. And
I believe.
yeah, and the phrase "a world that works for everyone" or "a world that works for all" can be problematic depending on what some people want. So it's a good slogan, and it's important to remember that if we find win-win solutions, which I think is the essence of what that's saying.
Yeah.
If I have a win-lose relationship with you, it just can't be sustainable.
Absolutely.
Because I've gained at your expense, or I feel like it was a great interchange and you did not feel like it was. That's not what I'm for. That requires listening. It potentially requires compromise. But I think that the curiosity is interesting. And it's interesting that you get that reaction when you tell people you're a minister.
When I was single, and I would tell people I was a minister, then all of a sudden I had these guys hitting on me going, "Ooh, you could get me a minister."
Really? I had just the opposite. In fact, I shared with some place I did a talk about, sharing my status as a transgender woman with my online dating profile. And then it's like, so do I share that I'm a minister too? That ought to make me completely off limits to everyone, right? It's like, oh my God, she's not only trans, she's a minister too. Holy cow.
Oh, that's a double.
Yeah. So
what do I do with that?
Yeah, we'll just rush right to swipe left or right or whatever way you swipe on those things to say, I want to get to know her better.
Well, it'd be wonderful if people wanted to get to know you better rather than some other curiosity that they might have. But I think what I love about this teaching, the science mind, and all New Thought teaching, frankly, is that we're taught that we are responsible for the lives that we live. We're not to blame for them, but we are responsible for them. And in that responsibility, that just means that I get to look at my reactions and hopefully come to a place of peace around them where I can forgive something that needs to be forgiven. I can let go of that which is complete and done. And instead of fighting with somebody, I can hold a place in my heart of love for them as I gently and genuinely say, thank you for sharing your opinion, and walking away. And I can do that with a loving heart. I don't have to have everybody agree with me. I mean, it's really nice when they do.
When they notice how brilliant all your conclusions are, right?
I mean, I really like that part, but I'm okay with the somebody going, that's stupid or that's ridiculous. What do you believe that? Like, how could you believe that? And there's judgment in that comment, but if I just say, well, what do you believe? What is your belief about life? What is your belief about death? That's another conversation that I love to have, is about death, because people have really different reactions to that conversation. And I think we need to have all these conversations.
And that's the key common element, right? Is we need to be talking with each other. We need to have a conversation.
Yeah.
I love your phrase, we're responsible for our lives, but we're not to blame for it, because I sometimes go into your innocence. Things happen to you in your life that you were innocent for. And And so that's the same kind of energy, I think, is not to blame. But you
Absolutely.
still are responsible for how you show up in the world, and you're always responsible for what you do with it, right?
Oh, yes, yes.
So my choice is, how do I react to that? How do I respond to that? Who do I want to
Yeah.
be in light of the fact that something happened that perhaps was a power differential, perhaps was an abuse of someone I thought I could trust in my life?
Mhm.
And I'm sure
Yeah,
many people would resonate with some aspect of that kind of statement. So who do
absolutely.
I want to be despite the fact that that was part of that? Or who do I want to be inspired to be because of that? I think that's a better lesson to take away.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, that's a big one because one of the things I've noticed. I mean, I've been a minister for coming up to 26 years, and what I find remarkable is that when people start to when some people come into the teaching and they come in because they think they need to be fixed or something, and then they come in and find out, oops, I'm responsible for the life that I'm living. Um, I've seen a lot of people not come back because they're like, what? I don't like my life, and now you're telling me that I'm responsible for it, that in part I have created it. And that to me, I find fascinating. And I watch, churches and stuff that are growing right now, which there's not a lot of them, but some of them are. And when they are growing, they have reached the youth, for starters. But again, what are they marketing? The world's falling apart. Life is, really bad and terrible, but we offer you a solution. And it could be Jesus Christ. Here, we're going to give you this because this is going to heal you. And I think a lot of that is, looking at the person as broken and come and get fixed, where what we're doing is working to inspire people to find their own voice and use it.
Yeah, and what if we didn't try to fix anyone? We just gave them grace, right? We created a container where they could feel the grace or the love of the divine or the love of God or
Yeah,
the universe, whatever you want to say,
yeah,
around that. Um, we did a DEI webinar on Saturday on ageism,
yeah.
and we featured, Reverend Cliff Rubin from Edmonton, CSL Edmonton, because he
Yeah.
has been doing a great job of growing his center and inviting people of a broader array of ages. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's like, so what's your secret sauce, or what kinds of things do you do to create a container where other people can see themselves being successful, right? And
Yeah.
that's kind of that invitation in. I don't think any centers or churches or spiritual communities are growing by shaming people into scaring them to go to hell for eternity for living a
Oh,
terrible life, right? I mean,
exactly.
I don't know that that ever worked, but
Yeah, I
if
don't
it
think
did,
so.
it didn't work all that well. And there's lots of collateral damage, which I think sometimes we inherit, that collateral damage of people where they have been shunned and belittled and everything. And I just don't think that any God that's all powerful and is all there is has to be vibrating at a higher level than that. That just makes sense to me.
Yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me as well. That there is an energy of oneness, which is what I think love is that, we're all one. We're all a part of something, and because we all are a valuable part. I sometimes think of, these beautiful tapestries that hang in museums. If a single thread was pulled from that tapestry, you would notice it. As big and multicolored as it is, you take that one thread out and it's just not the same. And I think when I think of humanity, I think of that tapestry of humanity, the full essence of who we are and how we live, and the joy and the light and the color and the brightness that we bring to this journey. I think that one missing would change the entire picture. We're
It
all,
would, and it might unravel the whole tapestry. You just
it
never
might
know, right?
unravel the entire thing. Exactly.
Well, now that we've solved that, should we move on to world peace? Because I think
Oh,
it,
perfect.
I mean, how hard can that be, right?
I've talked about, in order to have world peace, there's only one thing required, that each one of us at the very same moment decided to be peaceful within ourselves.
Hmm.
That's all it takes.
That's the work, isn't it?
That is the work.
That is the work. Yes. The work is to find peace in your heart and
Yeah.
acceptance for others. And it's harder than it sounds. It really is harder than it sounds.
It truly is, because there are moments where you get cut off in traffic, or you see something really horrible happen, or somebody yells at your child, or someone close to you passes on. There's a whole bunch of things that produce a response from us that might challenge us a bit. And I think one of the things that I like to really share with people is to be sure and be certain that whatever you're doing from that highest potential within you, that there is within you something truly beautiful and remarkable. And as you allow that to come to fruition, you create something beautiful all the way around. It's quite remarkable what can happen when we decide that we're enough.
Yeah. And that shining our light and being our highest vibration, or shining our light, that is a metaphor for the divine that has been, very ancient things, right? Even in the New Testament, talking about not hiding your light under a bushel. And
Yeah,
I don't think any of us came into this world to hide or diminish ourselves. I think each of us, being a unique expression of the divine, has a unique place within that tapestry you so beautifully spoke about. And for me to try to be a brown thread, if I came in to be an orange thread or whatever, or a turquoise, it's
exactly.
like it's not authentic, and I'm not adding to the beauty of that tapestry. So
Exactly.
being ourselves is both the hardest thing I think we ever do, and the highest calling for each and every one of us.
Yeah.
Be yourself, whatever that is, and
Yeah.
tie into that higher vibration expression of the divine, and let your light shine.
Yeah, I love that. And I really believe truly that each and every one of us is here by divine design, that there is not a single person, not a single one of us, no matter how we look, how we show up, none of us are a mistake. Even if your parents, say that it was a mistake, I assure you it was not. There are no mistakes.
I think you're right. And I think parents who say to their kids that were a mistake, that's a really challenging thing. For many years I believed I was a mistake, not because my parents weren't trying to have a child, but because I wasn't the child they thought they had. And so that's a very oppressive self belief to carry around, and it doesn't help your resiliency. So the more you can affirm your belief in your child, however they are or whoever they are, I think that helps their resilience as they encounter the world. And the world does not always revolve around what your child wants or what any of us want, but resiliency is a wonderful quality to make it through.
Yeah, and I think, we empower our children to do that when we're willing to tell them the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And I really think honesty with our children and modeling a behavior that is life affirming, I think is the best thing we can do with our children. Love them for who they are and show them who you are. Don't hide it. Don't pretend, because they will see right through you. Speaking as a mother of four.
And that's hard to do. My granddaughter I watched her on Wednesday, and she's 4, and she found a picture that was taken with my life coaching class. And she said, "Which one are you, Nana?" And that was before my transition. And I said, "That's who I am." And she goes, "Were you a boy?" And I said, "I was, but I'm a girl now." And so, but even that part of it, there would have been an easier way out, but it would not have been authentic. And we've talked about the fact that Nana used to be a boy and she decided she was really a girl. So, but I won't tell you that there isn't like a second when I think, oh, I don't want to share that part of you. I don't want to be complicated in your mind.
Exactly. It's like me standing up on a Sunday morning doing a Mother Day talk, and this little voice in the back is going, "Go ahead, tell them how many times you've been married. Come on, you can do it."
Yeah,
And
they
I'm
won't
like,
judge you.
"I
They
don't
won't
wanna
think
do
less
that."
of you, right?
Yeah, they won't think less of you.
They won't think less of you.
Actually, many of them thought more of me after
Did they?
telling
Oh,
me
okay,
this.
well, that's good.
but it's that every now and again there's something about your life that wants to pop up out of a talk, and you're like, no.
Yes. I
I
do
don't
think
understand.
keeping a distinction between your inside voice and your out loud voice is important for all of us. But as a minister standing on the pulpit, it's probably exceptionally important.
It truly is. Well, we're down to our last 4 minutes. And so, as I do in every show, I just want to ask you to share with our audience, what do you think is the greatest takeaway from this conversation today? What would you like them to take away from today?
I would like them to take away being civil and curious. I
Mm,
think civility is something that we have lost track of to a certain extent, certainly in my country.
mine too.
And civilization is more fragile than we think it is. And I think it takes longer to rebuild up things that we might blow up. And so civility and respect and curiosity about what other people believe or think or how they show up in the world, I think serves us well. So that would be my short takeaway.
I love it. That's a good one. That's a very good one. And I think I would say that belonging is the most important thing. And that in order for a person to feel like they belong, they have to feel accepted as they are. I think the minute we go, well, yeah, you could be if you did this or if you did that. I think we just need to accept people as they are. Some of them we're going to resonate with and create relationships with, and others we're going to go, wow, thank you for sharing, and move on. And I think we need to not tie ourselves to the horse that's running in the opposite direction to what we are.
Amen for that.
I don't even know where that came from, but anyway.
I know, but what a visualization. Wait a minute. That's not where I want to go. Take me back.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for being here, Christine. This was wonderful. Raymond, thank you for your comments. It was fabulous. It's just rich to be able to get those in there. And for everybody who's watching, this is the Joy Show. We're on the New Thought Media Network. And Joy to me is an acronym. It means just one you. You are a blessing to the world and a blessing in your life. And if you can receive that blessing for yourself, you will have a blessing to share with others. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I'm Barbara Jean, the host of this show, and I am so delighted that you are here today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Bye for now.